Hello there, welcome to Knowledge Powerhouse. Let's go on to our next question in this architect series of interview questions. And these questions are more from system design perspective. So we are naming it architect interviews question series, but you can take it system design, even to increase your knowledge, you can go through these questions. Question is, what is serverless architecture? So serverless is a very popular term these days. So let's understand what is serverless architecture. Serverless architecture refers to the architecture in which server-side logic of an application is run in stateless compute containers. Let's not go by this complex definition. Simply understand, whenever you have a software, you get a server and then you deploy to that server and then you start that server and start running it, right? So that's how these things work. Whereas in serverless architecture, you just create a function, that's your code. And that code is like a lambda or like it's just a function. And then you just give that code to like AWS or some kind of a cloud provider where that code is run like independent of which server. So you do not know where you have installed it. You do not know like what is the memory in that server. All you need is like this is your code and that is expected to run, right? So it's a stateless compute container. You do not know which actual server it is. So you are not like managing any virtual machine. You are not managing any Docker image, nothing like it. It's just a serverless thing, right? So in serverless, like compute cycles are event triggered. Let's say if you have put your code, now if whenever some event happens, then your code will be triggered, right? And the containers in which that code runs are ephemeral, so they are up only for a short duration. Only when your code is running, then only those containers are there, right? So you don't need to buy a container or like you need to rent a server for a long period of time. All you do is that you just give that code to like some serverless provider and they will run it as soon whenever that event is triggered. So these containers, they are fully managed by third-party services like AWS, Google Cloud, GCP. They all provide the serverless computing, and it is also known as function as a service. So basically, you're giving a function, and that function is run by those cloud providers, and you don't like own or rent any of those servers. So one of the popular serverless ARC services is AWS Lambda. This is from Amazon. It is available as a function as a service platform. So you can use like Lambda. Like there are certain events. Let's say you get some kind of an image, new image. Now you have to process it. So as soon as that image is uploaded by a user, that function can be called to process it and convert into like thumbnails or multiple kind of formats. Similarly, like if you get some kind of event from an IoT device, that event can trigger a function that will process that event and track it, store in the database, send it to somewhere. So that way you can use serverless for handling these kind of traffic. And then there are UI events like or message driven application. They also use serverless architecture. Like you receive something in the queue and then based on that message in the queue, you can invoke some kind of a code and that code will call a service. So that is all the examples of serverless architecture. So what are the advantages of serverless architecture? First biggest advantage is it is inherently scalable. Like, I mean, if you want to have like thousands of requests, millions of requests, like you can easily scale from one level to another level without making any changes. All you did is like you just gave a code and that code is expected to run by the cloud provider, and then based on the traffic they will provision new servers, they will provision everything. You don't need to manage anything like virtual machine or any kind of security. It will be running it, right? Second is, so there is no need to manage servers, so you reduce your operational costs. You don't need to depend on IT for that. And it can reduce compute costs also because you are charged only for the time the server is used. So like in other examples, if you get some kind of instance, you have to pay for every day or by compute cycles. But in this case, in serverless, you just pay by the how many times that function was run, right? So it will reduce your cost. Then we can reduce the latency also and improve the performance of the application by the running of code closer to the end user. So like if you have a function and people from different geographies are calling it, so those functions can be run to the servers which are closer to their geography. So that way the latency and performance can be improved. And last but not the least, it is easier to update and deploy in serverless architecture. Within minutes, you can deploy your new code and it will start running. There's no need to do a deployment with like new VM or new kind of a container or image kind of a thing. Within few minutes, like you just go to a UI, even from there, you can deploy it and your code will start running. Then what are the disadvantages of serverless architecture? There are like some advantages and some disadvantages also. One disadvantage is that sometimes the performance of an application may decrease in serverless architecture because like it's more like a function, and then if you have to call some of the stateful sources, then you are calling from stateless to stateful, and the performance may decrease because you're like invoking some service and you have your own limitation. Another disadvantage is that like which is nowadays reducing, it is that it is more challenging to test and debug an application in serverless architecture. So, I mean, testing and debugging becomes sometimes challenging, and there are extra security concerns also because you do not own the compute servers. So, sometimes security concerns are there. You do not know whether data will remain, how it will function, or it will be shared by somebody, or somebody can eavesdrop onto that. So, those concerns are also there. Then another issue is that locking into a specific computing vendor, like if you're using GCP or AWS, maybe you're using their like patterns, so that way you may log into some specific vendor. And one more disadvantage is that it may not be suitable for long running processes. Like I mean, if you have short compute functions, they are fine, but if you have a long running process, they may not be suitable for serverless architecture. All right, that's all from us on serverless architecture topic. And do go through those advantages and disadvantages. Try it out in your cloud offering from AWS or Azure or from Google Cloud. And let us know if you have any questions. Post it in the comments. That is the best way to reach out, and we can be happy to answer that. Thank you and have a great day.